Samantha Hayes had always believed in small acts of kindness. As a nurse working exhausting shifts at St. Clair's Hospital, she had witnessed human suffering in its many forms. But she had also seen the power of compassion, how a gentle touch, a kind word, or even a simple smile could make a difference. That belief was what led her to stop her car in the middle of a torrential downpour on a cold October evening. The rain had been relentless all day, pounding the streets with a force that made visibility nearly impossible. The city's drainage system struggled to keep up, leaving sidewalks flooded, and gutters overflowing like miniature rivers. Samantha had just finished her shift and was looking forward to nothing more than a hot shower and a cup of tea. But as she approached an intersection near a mostly deserted part of town, she spotted something, or rather, someone. An elderly man sat in a wheelchair, stranded near the curb. He was soaked, his thin jacket clinging to his frail frame, and his hands gripping the wheels tightly as if bracing himself against the storm. The few cars that drove by barely seemed to notice him. Samantha's heart clenched. She knew exhaustion would tempt most people to keep driving, to pretend they hadn't seen him, but she couldn't do that. She flicked on her hazard lights, pulled over, and grabbed the umbrella from her passenger seat. The moment she stepped outside, the wind nearly yanked it from her grip. Water sloshed over her shoes as she hurried toward the man, whose eyes flickered up at her with something between fear and suspicion. "Sir," she said over the rain, her voice gentle but firm. "Let me help you." The man didn't speak at first. His face was lined with deep wrinkles, his skin weathered from time and hardship. His white hair, damp and tangled, clung to his forehead. Something in his expression made Samantha pause. Was it wariness? Resignation? "You don't have to," he finally muttered, voice hoarse. Samantha smiled, though she doubted he could see it through the rain. "I know. But I want to." She shifted her umbrella so it covered him more than herself and placed a hand on his wheelchair. "Come on, let's get you somewhere dry." For a moment, he hesitated, as if torn between accepting help and keeping his pride. Then, with a slow nod, he let go of the wheels. Samantha braced herself against the wet pavement and began pushing. It wasn't easy, the chair was old, its wheels caked with mud, and the sidewalk was uneven. Every step was a battle against the storm, but she pushed on. As they reached the other side of the street, she realized something odd. The man had no belongings, no bag, no extra coat, nothing. Just him and his chair. "Where are you headed?" she asked, trying not to sound intrusive. He hesitated. "Nowhere in particular." Samantha frowned. "Do you live nearby?" He gave a noncommittal shrug. The rain had eased slightly, but the cold still bit at her skin. "Sir, I don't mean to pry, but do you have somewhere safe to go?" she pressed. "A shelter, a friend's place, I'll be fine," he cut in, sharper this time. His hands tightened on the armrests of his chair. Samantha studied him. He wasn't just wet and cold, he looked lost. As if he had no real destination, no real plan. She crouched beside him, her own hair dripping wet now. "Look, I can call someone. I know a shelter a few blocks from here. They have warm beds, food." "No," his tone was final. Samantha sighed, frustrated but unwilling to push further. If there was one thing she had learned as a nurse, it was that some people built walls around themselves so high that no amount of kindness could break through unless they let it. At that moment, a flash of lightning illuminated the sky, and for the first time, she saw something in his eyes. A deep sadness. A haunted look that sent a chill down her spine that had nothing to do with the rain. "Thank you," he finally said, softer now. "But I'll be fine." Samantha bit her lip. It felt wrong to leave him alone, but what else could she do? She couldn't force him to accept help. She reached into her coat pocket, pulling out a few crumpled bills and a small card. "Here," she said, pressing them into his palm. just in case. He looked down at the money, then at the card. His eyes narrowed slightly as he read the words, Samantha Hayes, RN, St. Clair's Hospital. His mouth parted slightly as if surprised. Then, after a long pause, he nodded. "You're a nurse." She smiled. "Yeah. It's what I do." For the first time, a flicker of something, gratitude, maybe, crossed his face. "That explains it." "Explains what?" "Why you stopped." Samantha tilted her head. "Wouldn't anyone?" A wry chuckle escaped him. "No. They wouldn't." Before she could respond, he closed his fingers around the card, gripping it tightly. His eyes met hers once more, and she saw something unreadable there. Then, without another word, he turned his chair toward a narrow alley and wheeled himself into the darkness. Samantha stood frozen, watching his figure disappear. A strange unease settled over her. Something about that interaction felt unfinished. Her gut told her to follow, to make sure he got somewhere safe. But reason told her she had done all she could. With a final glance at the alley, she sighed and turned back to her car. She didn't know it then, but that single moment, that small act of kindness, was about to change everything. She drove home in silence, the windshield wipers beating a steady rhythm against the glass. Yet no matter how much she tried to push the encounter from her mind, the man's haunted expression lingered. The next morning, Samantha's life resumed as normal. A quick breakfast, a rushed commute, another long shift at the hospital. By noon, she had almost convinced herself that the whole thing had been just another fleeting moment, one of many she encountered in her line of work. Until she was called to the reception desk. A well-dressed man stood waiting for her, his sharp suit starkly contrasting the sterile white walls of the hospital. He had an air of authority, someone who didn't waste time. Samantha frowned. "Can I help you?" He extended a sleek, black envelope. "Ms. Hayes, my name is David Lancaster. I'm an attorney representing Jonathan Reynolds." The name meant nothing to her. She took the envelope hesitantly. "I'm sorry, who?" The man studied her. "You helped him yesterday." Samantha's heart stuttered. "The man in the wheelchair." "Wait, you mean the elderly man in the rain?" The lawyer nodded. "He asked me to deliver this to you personally." A sense of unease rippled through her. This was unexpected. Why would he send a lawyer? "What is this?" she asked warily, staring at the envelope. The lawyer gave her a small, knowing smile. "An offer." Samantha's pulse quickened. "An offer for what?" His next words sent a chill down her spine. "For a decision that could change your life forever." Samantha stood frozen, gripping the sleek black envelope as though it held something dangerous. The lawyer, David Lancaster, watched her with an unreadable expression, his presence commanding but not overtly intimidating. The name Jonathan Reynolds still meant nothing to her, but the way he had said it, with a weight that suggested she should know, sent a ripple of unease through her. The hospital lobby was bustling around them, nurses passing, visitors murmuring, the distant sound of a beeping heart monitor echoing down the halls, but Samantha felt as if everything had slowed. It was just her, this stranger, and the ominous envelope she now held. "Why would he send me this?" she asked cautiously, her fingers brushing over the edge of the envelope. The weight of it suggested something more than just a simple thank you note. David Lancaster didn't answer immediately. Instead, he gestured toward a seating area by the lobby windows. "Perhaps we should sit down." Samantha hesitated. There was something about his tone, measured, professional, but also expectant. As if he knew something she didn't, and he was waiting for her to catch up. Against her better judgment, she nodded and led the way to one of the cushioned chairs by the window, the rain from the night before still glistening on the glass outside. She placed the envelope on the small table between them, staring at it as though it might burst into flames. Lancaster sat across from her, his sharp suit unruffled, his hands folding over one another in an effortless display of composure. "Mr. Reynolds has very few people he trusts," he began, watching her carefully. "He's a private man. Keeps to himself. But yesterday, you did something no one else has done in a very long time." Samantha lifted her eyes to meet his. "I just helped a man cross the street," she said, though even as she spoke the words, she knew it wasn't that simple. David's lips twitched, almost as if he were amused. "To you, it was just a simple act of kindness. To him, it was more than that." Samantha frowned, the unease growing in her chest. She didn't like riddles, and she certainly didn't like feeling like there was something she was missing. "Who is he?" she asked. "Why do I get the feeling this isn't just about last night?" Lancaster sighed, glancing briefly out the window before fixing his gaze back on her. "Jonathan Reynolds is a man of considerable wealth," he said finally. "Once, he was one of the most powerful real estate developers in this city. But after a tragedy years ago, he withdrew from the public eye. Sold off most of his assets, cut ties with nearly everyone. People assumed he had simply given up. That he was waiting to die." Samantha swallowed, suddenly remembering the way the old man had looked at her, worn, haunted, as if he carried an unbearable weight. Lancaster continued. "He's spent the past few years observing the world from the shadows. And in that time, he's been conducting a kind of test." Samantha raised an eyebrow. "A test?" "An experiment in human decency, if you will," he explained. "He wanted to see if there was still kindness left in the world. If people, when faced with an opportunity, would act with compassion or indifference." The words sent a chill down her spine. "And I was part of this test?" Lancaster nodded. "Unknowingly, yes. He's placed himself in vulnerable situations before. Dozens of times. Each time, people ignored him. Walked past. Pretended not to see. But you stopped." Samantha felt her pulse quicken. This was starting to feel surreal. She had thought nothing of that moment, only that it was the right thing to do. To hear it described this way, as if it had been some kind of monumental act, felt strange. "And so now what?" she asked, her voice measured. "This envelope, what is he asking me to do?" Lancaster gestured toward it. "Open it." Samantha hesitated. There was something about this that felt too big, too weighted. But she needed to know. She carefully peeled open the envelope and pulled out a single folded letter on heavy, expensive paper. She unfolded it and began to read. "Ms. Hayes, kindness is a rare thing. Rarer still when it comes with no expectation of reward. I have spent years searching for something that could change your life. But I will not ask more than you are willing to give. The decision is yours. If you choose to meet me, my lawyer will arrange the details. If not, you may walk away, and I will not trouble you again. Either way, thank you. Not just for helping me, but for reminding me that kindness still exists." Jonathan Reynolds. Samantha read the letter twice, then a third time, her mind racing. There was no mention of money. No direct offer of anything. Just an invitation. And yet, the weight of it felt heavier than any financial sum could have been. She placed the letter down slowly, pressing her palms against the table as she exhaled. "This is a lot." "I understand," Lancaster said smoothly. "It's not every day you receive a personal invitation from a reclusive millionaire." Samantha rubbed her temple. She had a life. A job. A son to take care of. This wasn't the kind of situation she ever imagined herself in. And yet, something about that old man had stuck with her. Something in his eyes, in the way he had clutched that card she had given him. He wasn't just looking for gratitude. He was looking for something else. "What does he want from me?" she asked finally. Lancaster studied her, as if measuring how much to reveal. That, I cannot say. Only that it is important. And that he believes you are the only person he can entrust with it. The words sent another ripple through her chest. Samantha looked down at the letter again, reading the last line over. The next morning, Samantha found herself standing outside a wrought iron gate, staring up at the looming mansion beyond. The address had been sent to her in a brief text from Lancaster, along with instructions to arrive at exactly 9 a.m. She had spent the entire night trying to make sense of what she was about to walk into. This was the kind of thing that happened in movies or books, not real life. A wealthy recluse, a mysterious offer, a meeting that could supposedly change everything. It was absurd. And yet, here she was. The estate was massive, a relic of old wealth, hidden behind towering trees and stone walls. It looked like something out of another century, with ivy creeping up the sides of the mansion and windows that seemed to watch her in silence. There was no intercom, no visible security cameras, only the heavy iron gate standing between her and whatever lay beyond. She hesitated, glancing down at her phone, where Lancaster's message simply read, "Walk inside. The gate will open for you." She exhaled, feeling the absurdity of the situation settle over her, but before she could make a decision, the gate groaned open on its own, its metal hinges creaking like an invitation, or a warning. Samantha stepped forward cautiously, the gravel crunching under her shoes as she made her way up the long, winding driveway. The air smelled of damp earth and old wood, the morning fog clinging to the trees like ghosts. With each step, her nerves tightened. What was she doing here? What did Jonathan Reynolds want from her? By the time she reached the front door, it opened before she could even knock. Lancaster stood on the other side, as composed as ever, his tailored suit pristine, his expression unreadable. "Ms. Hayes," he greeted, stepping aside. "He's been expecting you." She swallowed and stepped inside. The interior was just as imposing as the outside, towering ceilings, marble floors, grand chandeliers that dripped crystal light. It was the kind of wealth that didn't need to flaunt itself. It simply was. Yet, there was something eerie about the silence, the way the house seemed untouched, frozen in time. "He's in the study," Lancaster said, leading her down a long hallway lined with dark wood bookshelves and oil paintings of somber-looking men in high collars. "I should warn you, Mr. Reynolds isn't in the best health. He tires easily, so I ask that you be mindful of his condition." Samantha nodded, her stomach tightening as Lancaster stopped at a set of double doors and pushed them open. Inside, sitting by the massive window overlooking the garden, was Jonathan Reynolds. He was different from how she remembered him in the rain. That night, he had looked like just another struggling old man, beaten down by life. But here, in the grand study, in the tailored clothing that hung loosely over his frail frame, he looked powerful. Even in his illness, there was something commanding about him. His silver hair was neatly combed back, his piercing eyes sharp despite the deep wrinkles that lined his face. He turned as she entered, and for a moment, they simply stared at each other. Then, he smiled. "You came," he said, his voice quiet but steady. Samantha hesitated before stepping forward. "I did." Jonathan gestured to the chair across from him. "Sit." She did, glancing briefly at Lancaster, who remained by the door, observing in silence. For a moment, there was nothing but the ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner. Then Jonathan exhaled, clasping his hands together as he studied her. "Tell me, Ms. Hayes," he said finally. "Why did you stop that night?" Samantha blinked at the unexpected question. "Because you needed help." Jonathan chuckled, shaking his head. "Many people saw me that night. Many people passed me by. They saw I needed help, too." Samantha shifted uncomfortably. "I don't know. I didn't think about it. I just did what was right," he finished for her. He nodded, as if confirming something to himself. That is precisely why you're here. She frowned, not understanding. Mr. Reynolds, I don't mean to be rude, but why am I here? Your lawyer said you had something important to tell me. I do, he said, leaning back in his chair. But first, let me ask you another question. She braced herself. Okay. If I told you that I could change your life today, would you let me? The question sent a shiver through her. That depends, she said carefully. Change it how? Jonathan studied her for a long moment before sighing. I don't have much time left, Ms. Hayes. Samantha felt her throat tighten. She had suspected as much, his frail appearance, the way Lancaster had warned her that he tired easily, but hearing him say it so plainly made it real. I have spent my life building something, he continued. I need someone who can carry out my vision in a way that no institution ever could. Samantha's mind spun. This wasn't just about money. This was something bigger. I'm not sure I'm the right person for this, she admitted. Jonathan's eyes darkened slightly. If you don't accept it, someone else will. Someone who might not share the same morals you do. And that, Ms. Hayes, is what truly terrifies me. Samantha inhaled sharply. She had walked into this house expecting nothing more than a strange conversation, a bizarre but fleeting moment in her life. Instead, she was being handed a choice that could change everything. A choice she wasn't sure she was ready to make. Samantha sat frozen in the grand study, her mind struggling to wrap itself around the weight of Jonathan Reynolds' words. The fire crackled softly in the fireplace, casting flickering shadows across the walls, but she barely noticed. Her entire focus was on the frail yet powerful man before her, the man who had just asked her to take on a responsibility far beyond anything she had ever imagined. You're telling me, she said, her voice steadier than she felt, that you want to entrust me with your entire estate? Your wealth, your business, your legacy. Jonathan nodded once, his expression unreadable. That is exactly what I'm saying. Samantha exhaled, shaking her head. I don't understand. You don't even know me. On the contrary, Jonathan replied. I know you better than you think. You see, Ms. Hayes, wealth changes people. I have spent my life watching how power corrupts. I have seen good men turn cruel, honest men turn deceitful. I have seen greed twist people into something unrecognizable. And I have spent years searching for someone who is different. Samantha swallowed, the weight of his words pressing down on her. And you think that's me? I know it's you. She let out a nervous laugh. You don't know that. What if I change? What if I become just like those people? Jonathan studied her, then leaned forward slightly. Tell me something, Samantha. What would you do with great wealth? If I handed you everything tomorrow, what would be the first thing you'd do? She hesitated, caught off guard by the question. Her mind flickered through possibilities: pay off her student loans, buy a house for her and her son, finally take a vacation. But none of those things felt like the real answer. The real answer was something deeper, something that had lived inside her for years. I'd help people, she admitted quietly. I'd open a clinic. A place for people who can't afford medical care. I see them every day. Patients who get turned away because they don't have insurance, families choosing between medicine and rent. I'd do something about that. Jonathan's face remained impassive, but his eyes gleamed with something she couldn't quite place. You didn't hesitate, he said. Not even for a second. Samantha realized he was right. The words had come out naturally, without thought. Because they were true. Jonathan exhaled, sitting back in his chair. That is why I chose you. Because the first thing you thought of wasn't yourself. Samantha stared at him, her heart pounding. This was too much. Too fast. She shook her head. But what if I don't want this? What if I say no? Jonathan nodded, as if he had expected the question. Then you walk away, and I will respect that decision. Samantha hesitated. And what happens to your estate if I walk away? The old man's expression darkened slightly. It will go to my next of kin. A chill ran through her. I thought you said you didn't have family. I don't, he admitted. At least, not family I trust. Samantha didn't like the way he said that. Who are they? Jonathan exhaled slowly. A distant nephew. A man I have never met in person, but who has made it very clear that he is waiting for me to die. A man who, if given the chance, would liquidate everything I have built, pocket the wealth, and leave nothing behind. Samantha felt a pit form in her stomach. If you walk away, Jonathan continued, this all falls into his hands. He will sell everything, my businesses, my charities, my home. And everything I have worked for will be gone. Samantha clenched her fists. She hated that this decision carried such weight. If she refused, it wasn't just her life that would change, it was the lives of countless others. Still, it was overwhelming. The idea of stepping into a world she didn't belong to, of suddenly holding more power than she could comprehend, it terrified her. Jonathan seemed to sense her hesitation. He leaned forward, his voice softer now. I don't expect you to answer today. But I do ask that you think about it. Samantha bit her lip. And if I say yes? What happens then? Jonathan smiled, but there was sadness in it. Then I teach you everything you need to know. And when my time comes, you will take my place. Samantha's pulse pounded in her ears. I don't need an answer now, he said again. But you must understand, this decision cannot wait forever. Samantha nodded slowly. She needed time to think. To breathe. Jonathan reached for a small bell on the table beside him and rang it once. A moment later, Lancaster appeared at the door. David will take you home, Jonathan said. Think carefully, Samantha. I am offering you something that very few people ever receive, a chance to change the world. Samantha rose on shaky legs. Her mind swirled with 1,000 thoughts, none of them clear. She turned toward the door, but before she left, she glanced back at Jonathan one last time. His eyes were unreadable, but there was something else there, something deeper than just wealth or legacy. There was hope. And that terrified her more than anything. Samantha sat in the back of Lancaster's car, staring blankly out the window as the city blurred past. The gravity of the situation pressed heavily on her chest, leaving her breathless. Believe we have a mutual acquaintance, Jonathan Reynolds. Every muscle in Samantha's body tensed. I'm his nephew, the man continued. I understand he's made you an interesting proposition. Samantha's grip on the door tightened. I don't know what you're talking about. Richard chuckled. Come now. No need to play coy. I just want to talk. Samantha didn't move. Every instinct screamed at her to close the door, but something about the way he was looking at her made her hesitate. I'm not interested, she said firmly. Whatever you're here for, I don't. I want to warn you, Richard interrupted, his smile never faltering. Before you make a mistake. Samantha frowned. What mistake? Richard tilted his head, studying her. Jonathan is a dying man, he said casually. And dying men do strange things. They get desperate. Make rash decisions. I'm sure you think this is a noble gesture, him choosing you, a complete stranger, over his own blood. His eyes darkened. But it's not that simple. Samantha crossed her arms. Seems pretty simple to me. He doesn't trust you. Richard's smile twitched, his eyes narrowing just slightly. Jonathan and I may not have had the best relationship, he admitted. But that doesn't mean I don't care about what happens to his estate. He stepped forward, and Samantha had to fight the urge to step back. You don't belong in this world, Ms. Hayes. You don't understand the game that's being played. Samantha swallowed, keeping her voice steady. And what game is that? Richard sighed dramatically. Let me make it easier for you. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a sleek black envelope, eerily similar to the one Lancaster had given her. Inside is a check, he said. A generous one. More than enough for you and your son to live comfortably for the rest of your lives. All you have to do is walk away. Tell Jonathan you're not interested, and this is yours. Samantha stared at him, her stomach twisting. She could take it. She could end this right now, never have to worry about money again. She could provide Liam with everything he ever needed, without stepping into whatever chaos was waiting for her on the other side of Jonathan's offer. But that's exactly what Richard was counting on. Samantha slowly lifted her gaze to his, seeing him for what he really was. You're afraid, she said, realization dawning on her. Richard blinked. Excuse me? She took a step forward. You wouldn't be here if you weren't afraid. If you really thought I wasn't a threat, you'd ignore me. But instead, you're offering me a bribe to disappear. Richard's jaw tightened just slightly, the first crack in his perfect facade. Tell me, Richard, she continued. What exactly are you afraid of? His lips pressed into a thin line. Then, just as quickly, his expression smoothed back into that perfect, effortless charm. You should think about what's best for your son, he said, his voice low. You don't want to get caught up in something you don't understand. Samantha felt the cold thread of warning beneath his words, but she didn't flinch. She reached out, took the envelope from his hand, and without breaking eye contact, ripped it in half. Richard's smile finally faded. I'm not for sale, she said coolly. For a moment, there was nothing but silence between them. Then, Richard let out a slow chuckle, shaking his head. Jonathan chose well, he admitted. You've got some fire in you. He turned, adjusting his coat as he stepped back onto the sidewalk. This isn't over, he called over his shoulder. Be careful, Ms. Hayes. You have no idea what you're stepping into. And with that, he disappeared into the night. Samantha closed the door, her heart hammering. She had made her choice. But something told her this was only the beginning. The moment Richard Vance disappeared into the night, Samantha locked the door behind her, pressing her back against it as she exhaled shakily. Her heart was still pounding. The torn pieces of the bribe he had offered lay at her feet, a stark reminder of the reality she had just stepped into. She had expected doubt, maybe even some resistance from Jonathan's family, but this? A man showing up at her doorstep in the middle of the night, trying to buy her silence? That was something else entirely. She needed answers. Without thinking, she grabbed her coat, snatched up her car keys, and slipped out the back door. Liam was asleep, and her neighbor, Mrs. Carter, had always told her she was just a phone call away if she ever needed anything. Samantha left her a quick message, then drove straight back to Jonathan Reynolds' mansion. By the time she arrived, the gates were already open, as if someone had been expecting her. She parked near the entrance and hurried toward the house, her mind spinning with too many questions, too many implications. Lancaster met her at the door. His expression was unreadable, but something in his posture told her he wasn't surprised to see her back so soon. I assume this isn't a social visit, he said dryly. Samantha didn't bother with pleasantries. Richard Vance came to my house tonight. That got his attention. His brows furrowed. Did he threaten you? He tried to buy me off, she said. Told me to walk away. Made it clear that if I didn't, I'd regret it. Lancaster sighed, rubbing his temple. I told Jonathan this would happen. Samantha crossed her arms. Then start talking. What aren't you telling me? Lancaster hesitated, then gestured for her to follow him. They walked through the dimly lit hallways until they reached Jonathan's study. The old man was sitting by the fire, a thick blanket draped over his legs. He looked tired, more so than when she had last seen him, but when he turned his head and saw her standing there, a knowing smile tugged at his lips. "I see you've had your first run-in with Richard," he said, his voice raspier than before. Samantha sat across from him, folding her hands in her lap. "You knew he would come for me?" Jonathan nodded. "Of course. He's been waiting for years, circling like a vulture. But he's impatient, and that's his weakness." Samantha frowned. "Why didn't you warn me?" "Because I needed to see what you would do," Jonathan admitted. "If you had taken his offer, then you would have proven yourself unworthy of mine." Samantha exhaled sharply, shaking her head. "You're playing a dangerous game, Mr. Reynolds." Jonathan chuckled. "That's the only kind worth playing." She wasn't in the mood for riddles. "I need to know the truth. Why does Richard want your fortune so badly? What aren't you telling me?" Jonathan studied her for a long moment before nodding slightly. "Very well," he said. "It's time you knew everything." Lancaster moved to a cabinet, unlocked it, and retrieved a thick leather-bound file. He handed it to Samantha. She flipped it open and felt her stomach drop. The first page was a newspaper article. Vance Corporation scandal, corruption, fraud, and embezzlement allegations surface. Samantha's eyes flicked to the next page. Another article. This one detailing a massive lawsuit against the Vance family for illegal land acquisitions, forced evictions, and bribery. She looked up. "Richard's family has built their empire on the suffering of others," Jonathan finished. "They are ruthless, manipulative, and will do whatever it takes to expand their wealth. Including getting rid of obstacles." A cold chill ran down Samantha's spine. "And you think I'm an obstacle?" Jonathan's expression turned serious. "You are the obstacle." Samantha swallowed. Jonathan sighed. "Richard believes that by securing my estate, he will have enough leverage to take over everything I've spent my life building. He will dismantle my charities, my foundations, my legacy. He will strip it down and sell it piece by piece, leaving nothing behind but numbers in a bank account." Samantha clenched her fists. "And if I accept your offer, I stop him?" Jonathan's eyes darkened. "Yes. But it will not be easy." She knew that. The moment Richard had stood on her doorstep, she had known she was stepping into something bigger than herself. But she also knew she couldn't walk away now. She took a steadying breath. "What do I have to do?" Jonathan smiled, a tired, knowing smile. "Accept." Samantha looked at Lancaster. "Legally, what does that mean?" Lancaster cleared his throat. "If you accept, we will begin the transition process immediately. Jonathan has already put everything in place. His assets, his properties, his businesses, they will all transfer to you upon his passing. You will have full control over his empire." Samantha let that sink in. "If I say yes," she said slowly, "Richard will come after me." Jonathan didn't sugarcoat it. "Yes. But you will not be alone." Samantha turned to Lancaster. "And legally, can he fight this?" Lancaster hesitated. "He can try. But Jonathan's will is airtight. The only way Richard can take control is if he proves that you are unfit to handle the inheritance." Samantha exhaled. "Meaning?" "Meaning if you make one wrong move, one scandal, one mistake, he will use it against you." Samantha's mind raced. Richard wouldn't just sit back and let this happen. He would come for her. He would try to ruin her. She glanced at Jonathan, who was watching her with quiet patience. He wasn't pressuring her. He Wasn't demanding anything. He was simply waiting. Waiting for her to make the decision that would change her life forever. Samantha took a deep breath. She thought of Liam. Of the patients who came into the hospital, desperate for care they couldn't afford. Of all the lives she could change if she had the power to do so. She thought of Richard. Of his smug smile, his threats, his belief that she was weak enough to walk away. And then, she thought of Jonathan. A man who had spent his life searching for someone who would do the right thing when no one else would. Samantha met Jonathan's gaze and nodded. "I accept." Jonathan's eyes gleamed with something almost like pride. "Then it's time to begin." And just like that, her life changed forever.